What's happening, everybody? On today's show, Mississippi State officially hires Zach Arnett as their new head coach, replacing Mike Leach. We'll catch up with Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators as Florida's the first SEC team in bowl action tomorrow in the Las Vegas Bowl. And we'll get you caught up on the latest transfers, recruiting commits, and more. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at LockedOnSEC.com. Let's jump into it. Let's go around the conference.
Boots out to the right. Takes the handoff. What a catch!
Around the conference.
And we start over at Mississippi State as Zach Arnett, who has been with the program as defensive coordinator since 2020 under Mike Leach. He's officially been named the new head coach after Mike Leach passed away this week at age of 61 due to complications from a heart condition. Mississippi State moved quickly to keep the continuity going with the program. Zach Arnett said in a statement, "I am honored to lead our program. This is an extremely challenging time for both me and everybody associated with Mississippi State football. No one can ever replace Coach Leach and the impact he had on our community and all of college football. This team's full of strong, resilient young men. We're committed to continuing to build on the foundation Coach Leach laid and continue to honor his legacy." Arnett's contract will be for 4 years, which is the maximum number of years allowed under state law in Mississippi. It'll pay him $3 million a year. Of course, prior to his time at Mississippi State, he had been at San Diego State from 2011 to 2019, working his way up to defensive coordinator before coming to Mississippi State. It's highly thought of, and now he gets a great opportunity to coach an SEC team. And look, they had named him interim coach when the incident first happened with Coach Leach on Sunday. With National Signing Day coming up, it just makes sense, right? I mean, when you're going into National Signing Day, you don't want to say, "Hey, I'm Zach Arnett. I'm the interim coach. I don't know if I'll be here in a year." It makes sense for Mississippi State to move quick and say, "Look, he's our guy. He's our head coach. He's not going anywhere. Come play for him." So congrats to Zach Arnett. See what he does as head coach at Mississippi State. Meanwhile, over at South Carolina, Shane Beamer hired Dole Loggins as South Carolina's new offensive coordinator, replacing Marcus Satterfield, who left to go coach under Matt Rule at Nebraska. But since news of the hire broke, it was not widely applauded, I guess, in circles, media circles around college football. And Shane Beamer took the media to task. He said, "Look, I could have easily hired one of the hot names. I'm not interested in winning press conferences. I'm interested in hiring the guy that could continue to move this program forward." He said, "We hired a big-time coach. Couldn't be more excited about hiring Dole." A lot of people wondering why Shane Beamer got so testy about it. Look, if that's your guy, it's your guy. Just say, "This is who we fired to be our OC. And we believe in him. Got a great track record as an offensive coordinator at the NFL level. Expect him to do the same here in Columbia." So we'll see. But Shane Beamer made some headlines this week with his testy exchange with the media. Meanwhile, over at Arkansas, Sam Pittman making it official. Morgan Turner will be their new tight ends coach. He will replace Dole Loggins, who left for South Carolina. Morgan Turner is an Illinois alum. He's the son of former NFL coach Ron Turner, who's a student assistant for the Illini and quarterbacks coach in Indiana State in 2009. He was on staff at Stanford the past 10 seasons as their tight ends coach. So Morgan Turner coming to coach tight ends under Sam Pittman at Arkansas. Meanwhile, over at Mizzou, they lost their quarterbacks coach to Boise State, Bush Hamden. He has been named Boise State's new offensive coordinator. Came to Mizzou in 2020 as their wide receivers and quarterbacks coach. This year, only coached the quarterbacks at Mizzou. but he will head on up to Boise State. Meanwhile, over at Auburn, Philip Montgomery was officially named their new offensive coordinator on Wednesday. The program announced the former Tulsa head coach, now on the Plains, who was Tulsa's head coach for the last 8 seasons. And Auburn started to put together some other pieces of their coaching staff now. On Thursday, it was reported by On3 Sports that Ron Roberts and Hugh Freeze making a change at their linebacker coaching spot, letting go of Christian Robinson, who's a big fan favorite among Auburn fans. According to the report, Auburn is expected to bring in former Liberty linebacker coach Josh Aldridge to come coach linebackers. So Christian Robinson being let go, and Josh Aldridge coming over from Liberty to coach linebackers at Auburn under Hugh Freeze. Over at Florida, the Las Vegas Bowl is set for Saturday, kicking off bowl season. Florida squeaking into the postseason at 6-6. Gators released their official depth chart for the bowl matchup against Oregon State. Most notably, Jack Miller set to get the start at quarterback, with Anthony Richardson declaring for the draft. They'll also be missing offensive lineman Osiris Torrance, who's getting ready for the draft. Florida looking to get their second strong win of the season over a Pac-12 opponent if they can upset the Beavers on Saturday. BetOnline's got them about a 10.5 point underdog. Florida opened the year by shocking number 7 Utah to open the season. Back at Mizzou, some good news as defensive back Chris Abrams-Draine announced Wednesday he is staying in Como for next season. He will be a massive get back for Mizzou, led the conference in pass breakups with 13. At 40 tackles, fumble recovery, was projected a middle round pick in this year's draft. So hoping to raise his stock and come back for another year playing in the SEC. He's already played 3 years in Columbia, totaling 77 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 20 pass deflections. Started a wide receiver before he moved to defensive back his freshman year, and it's paid off so well. Over at Georgia, Kirby Smart talking with the media as they continue to prepare for their playoff game against Ohio State. He was asked for an update on Ladd McConkey and Warren McClendon, who both got banged up in the SEC championship game. He said, we've been practicing to maintain staying in shape. I don't know when exactly we'll get those guys back, but they're not practicing just yet. So that's something to keep an eye on. Let's jump into the transfer portals. Transfer portal around the SEC. Mississippi State landing a big player from the transfer portal. Kamari Rogers entered the transfer portal at the University of Miami. Now the Mississippi product has announced he is heading to Starkville. The true freshman was the 16th overall prospect to transfer from Miami and the 8th defensive back. He was a consensus 4-star prospect, the 9th ranked corner in last year's class. Didn't see much action as a freshman, appearing only in the season opener, registering 1 tackle. But Kamari Rogers heading to Mississippi State. Mississippi State also kept 3-star safety Dylan Lawrence playing for them back in 2019, appeared in 12 games for the Bulldogs, but now with 2 years eligible, he is entering into the transfer portal. So we'll see where Dylan Lawrence ends up. Meanwhile, for Lane Kiffin over at Ole Miss, he got some good news on Thursday night. His Central Florida linebacker, Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, announced he is heading to play for Ole Miss. Spent 4 seasons with the UCF Knights, an impressive career, recording 152 tackles, 7 pass defended, 2 forced fumbles, 2 sacks, and 1 interception. One other note, Lane Kiffin had an in-home visit this week with Mississippi State receiver Rara Thomas, who entered the portal. So we'll see if he'll be yet another former Mississippi State wide receiver to head to Ole Miss via the transfer portal. Over at LSU, Brian Kelly losing some pieces to the transfer portal. Freshman corner Jalen Davis Robinson entered the portal. He'll have 4 years of eligibility remaining. LSU has now lost 13 players to the portal, 10 of which were on the active roster during the season. Other players include Mekhi Garner, Jarek Bernard-Converse, and Colby Richardson, who's declared for the draft or will be out of eligibility. So LSU looking to rebuild that secondary. Also on their offensive line, Xavier Hill announced he is entering the transfer portal. He's in a mix to be a starter this year, but slipped down the depth chart. So Xavier Hill in the portal. Over at Kentucky, Mark Stoops continuing to add talent via the transfer portal. They landed the commitment on Thursday of former Cincinnati defensive back J.Q. Hardaway. He had officially visited Lexington over the weekend. played seldom this past year under Luke Fickell, recorded 93 defensive snaps. He'll have 3 years of eligibility at Kentucky. Their pass defense was second among SEC teams this year, trailing only Texas A&M. And Hardaway now becomes the third transfer added to Kentucky's roster. Former Alabama offensive lineman Tanner Bowles, and Northern Illinois defensive lineman Marcus Cox announced on Thursday morning he is headed to Kentucky. He came into the season for Northern Illinois with 33 consecutive starts at left tackle before he suffered an injury. So that'll be a big piece for Kentucky. Should slide right in at their left tackle spot. Their offensive line really struggled this year. Florida defensive back Donovan McMillan, we knew he was in the portal. He is officially committed to Pitt. Over at South Carolina, on 3 Sports reporting, South Carolina starting pass rusher Gilbert Edmond has entered the portal, becomes the 10th Gamecock to enter the portal. He was a 1-year starter, played in 10 games this past year, recorded 39 tackles, 9 quarterback pressures, and 2 sacks. So redshirt sophomore will have 2 years of eligibility remaining. Gamecocks continue to lose some big talent. Jaheim Bell ended up over at Florida State. Marshawn Lloyd, the running back, he's in the portal. Austin Stogner on his way back to Oklahoma. Corey Rucker, wide receiver, he appeared in just 2 games for the Gamecocks this season, had 1 catch for 52 yards and a touchdown. He's in the portal. Over at Alabama, their former starting offensive lineman Javian Cohen setting to visit Miami this upcoming weekend. A lot of folks think he is going to end up going to Miami. Cohen started 11 of Alabama's 12 regular season games this year, started 14 of 15 games as a sophomore a year ago. Cohen, according to reports, had already received an offer from Miami, and Crimson Tide going to have to replace both interior offensive linemen as Emil Ekiyor is headed to the NFL draft. Over at Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher losing one of his pieces from that big historic 2022 recruiting class on Wednesday. Defensive back, 4-star defensive back, Smoke Bowie announced he is entering the transfer portal, appeared in 7 games for the Aggies this year as a true freshman. Over at Auburn, some good news for Hugh Freeze as defensive lineman Zykevius Walker withdrew his name from the transfer portal. So some good news for them as he will stick around, and also some good news for them as Coastal Carolina quarterback Grayson McCall is set to visit Auburn. He has not yet set a date, but confidence is high that Auburn will host the All-Sun Belt star this week, believed to be one of the best quarterback options coming out of the portal. He was the Sun Belt Player of the Year, passed for 2,600 yards and 24 touchdowns. Still has 2 years of eligibility remaining, so see if Grayson McCall ends up on the plane. So there you have it. This is the latest news going on around the conference. Coming up a little bit later, we'll get into the guys declaring for the draft as well as some recruiting nuggets. But first, thanks again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we're going to preview the SEC Bowl game, the first SEC Bowl game as the Florida Gators take on Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl. We'll catch up with our buddy Brandon Olsen, host of Locked On Gators. That's coming your way in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys about our friends at BetOnline. This episode is presented by BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You can get all the latest odds and trends for every pro and amateur league out there, from the NFL to college bowl season to college basketball, World Cup. They've got it all up there for you at betonline.net. They'll also have some podcasts up there as well, some great articles, all kinds of great content for you, and they are the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting information. Head on over to their website today. You can do so on your mobile device. It is BetOnline, betonline.net. It is where the game starts, and again, all the action happening this weekend. We got 6 bowl games happening on Saturday. We've got 3 NFL games on Saturday, and if you want all the latest information for those games, you could check them out at betonline.net. Bookmark it on your phone. Head on over to BetOnline. Like we said, it is where the game starts. Also, want to remind you, this episode is presented by our friends at the Texas Bowl. Tax Act Texas Bowl, Houston's biggest college football event, returning December 28th as the Texas Tech Red Raiders take on head coach Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels in the Tax Act Texas Bowl. Don't miss out on your chance to be a part of the passion, the pageantry, and the fun as college football season winds down. Tickets, suites, and game day experiences are on sale now at Ticketmaster and at taxacttexasbowl.com. They're going to have tons of stuff going on. And look, if you're looking for something for the whole family to enjoy during the holiday break, there's no better way to have fun this holiday season. Tickets starting as low as just $25. Visit taxacttexasbowl.com. Get your tickets and all the details on a full lineup of bowl week events including concerts, team experiences, and more. So they got a pretty good concert coming up that's going to involve both fan bases from Texas Tech and Ole Miss. You want to be a part of it. That's the Tax Act Texas Bowl, taxacttexasbowl.com for more information. It's the Red Raiders versus the Ole Miss Rebels to close out the college football season in Houston. Don't miss it. I want to remind you guys, if you are hanging out with some friends this holiday season, putting back a few drinks can become a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, but you think, nah, I live nearby. You can make it home. It's no big deal. What are the odds you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to help save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride home this holiday season. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA. Drive sober or get pulled over. Rolling along here on Locked On SEC. We're getting you guys ready for the first weekend of bowl season, and the SEC, it's the Florida Gators getting things underway this Saturday. So who better than to get us caught up on the Florida Gators and ready for the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl as the 6-6 Florida Gators take on the 9-3, 14th ranked in the country Oregon State Beavers. Brandon, how are you? Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators. What's up, man?
I was a lot better before we started talking about the game.
Yeah, I mean, look, here on Locked On SEC, we cover everything around the conference, and in terms of football, outside of getting ready for National Signing Day in a couple days, I mean, the Florida Gators have the unfortunate distinction of getting the bowl season started. And I say that because this Las Vegas Bowl is pretty cool. When they announced this a couple years ago, they're like, an SEC team versus a Pac-12 team. So many SEC fan bases are like, please, I'd love to go to the Las Vegas Bowl. For some reason, this is like low on the totem pole. Now, in one aspect, it sucks because you don't get much, you don't even get a full slate of bowl practices to prepare for it. From the time they announce you're going here to when the bowl game actually is, you only get like a week and a half to prepare. But let's talk a little bit about the Florida Gators. We'll get into a little bit of what's happened here the last few weeks. But, man, all the opt-outs and all the guys hitting the transfer portal and all this, my first question, and serious question, is Florida going to have enough guys to fill the team this weekend?
Yeah, I think Florida has 55 players, if I'm not mistaken, whether it's opt-outs because of hitting the transfer portal, draft declarations, injuries that we didn't really know about, maybe happened during practice. We haven't really gotten clarification on, but like Keon Zipperer got injured early in the year, came back, and is now out for the bowl game. Javon Dexter declared for the draft, but is playing in the bowl game. He's the only draft declaration that has actually announced he's going to the draft that is playing in this game. Of course, there's other names like Richard Garage accepted a Senior Bowl invite, so he's probably gone. Amari Burney, Trey Dean accepted a Shrine Game invite, so he's probably gone. But there's, I think, 2 portal players playing in this game in David Reese, and backup long snapper Chase Whitfield is also playing in it. But it's going to be rough. I will say I think there's a good deal of starters playing in this game. It's just you're 1 or 2 injuries away from being completely screwed.
Let's talk about the big one. Anthony Richardson announces he's declaring for the draft. And most mock drafts I'm looking at still have him anywhere from middle of the first to back into the first. And you can't fault a guy for going pro if he's projected as a first-round pick. That said, everybody I've talked to has said, man, I feel like he would have benefited from another year of college. Did Billy Napier, I mean, how much did they try to sway him and convince him at all to stay and develop a little bit more?
They tried. I know that the coaching staff tried. I know that the players tried. The players were publicly trying to politic him to stay. I know Montreal Johnson had that little clip where he was doing a press conference and he was like, "Yeah, we need you for another year." And then he looked right into the camera and he's like, "Ant." So they were trying to get him back, but and the thing that I will always say with Anthony Richardson specifically, or any quarterback really that has his skill set, he is a physical anomaly. People his size don't move the way he moves. And if they do, they can't throw the ball the way that he does. So I fully get it. I fully support him going to the draft. I think it was the right decision because I think the risk of coming back, you come back, you maybe make another few $1,000,000 getting drafted higher in the first round. But if you have another year of inconsistent tape that you put out there, it's no longer going to be Anthony Richardson is this insanely high ceiling quarterback. He's this insanely high ceiling prospect. If you have this 1 year of bad tape, then you could say, it was his first year as a starter. He's inexperienced, first year in the system. If he does it for a second year, then you get into maybe this is just who he is, because we see all these highly touted quarterbacks come back for a second year. And if they don't excel, then it's like, okay, maybe that's just who they are. And we kind of start or stop loving their potential. And I think that Anthony Richardson, it was the right move to go to the NFL draft. I think it was just too big of a risk to come back for another year, risk injury, risk not improving as much as you thought you would. And then you're a year older, you've got another year of tape, and you've got another year of people saying, well, maybe this is just who he is.
So Richardson declares for the draft. So he's gone. The guy who was basically, I don't know if you'd say heir apparent, but the backup, Jalen Kitna, has one of the worst storylines you could ever fathom here in recent weeks. Arrested on child pornography. Let's just say he's out. Put that bluntly, been dismissed or at least indefinitely suspended from the program. So you turn to the roster, and a guy that people were high on is a transfer from Ohio State last offseason, Jack Miller. There were some people excited about him, but we never saw him. It felt like every week throughout the season, Brandon, was Jack Miller. He's still kind of questionable. He's still kind of banged up. This is the Jack Miller game, right? We're going to see what Jack Miller's got. I believe, looking at his numbers, in his time as an Ohio State backup, 7 of 14 for 100 yards. No sacks in there, so that's a positive, but no idea what to expect from Jack Miller, right?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one because he came in as it was supposed to be Anthony Richardson, Emory Jones, Jack Miller III competing for a starting quarterback spot. Then Emory went to 2 practices and then hit the portal. And then it was Anthony Richardson and Jack Miller III competing for a starting quarterback spot. And by the end of spring ball, it was, is Jack Miller III even the second best quarterback on this team? Because Jalen Kitna was showing up. So Jack Miller III went through spring camp, rather lackluster performances there. And then he got injured during fall camp. He injured his thumb. He needed surgery on his thumb. And it took way longer than expected for him to get back to full strength. And a lot of that is when you mess up your thumb, that's obviously how you grip a football as a quarterback. So he couldn't really get that grip strength going. He looks like he's good to go now. We'll see just how full strength he is. I'd imagine he is completely healthy. This is a thumb surgery that happened a third of a year ago at this point. Like, it happened a while ago. So it's been a bit that he's been able to recover here. But either way, I think that this is Jack Miller III's true audition to go into spring ball leading that quarterback 1 race, because Florida's quarterback room, incredibly young, incredibly inexperienced. And either way, someone has to be a starting quarterback on this team at some point. You might as well give it to the guy that, for now, you were expecting to compete for the starting quarterback job going into the year.
Yeah, Justin Shorter also heading off to the draft. I mean, it's just, it's going to be a bare bones product, but I got to think the run game, I mean, they got some good running backs back there. This is going to be Florida leaning heavily on the run game Saturday, right?
Oh, yeah. I fully expect to see 18 plus carries for both Montreal Johnson and Trevor Etienne. It's the thing they're, 1, good at, and 2, being forced to do based on just who's there and who's not.
Let's talk a little bit about just some of the other guys who declared for the draft. Osiris Torrance, it was a very quick 1 year in, 1 year out there. Uh, any surprises of guys who are heading off to the draft, or basically as expected?
I think so far it's as expected. The biggest surprise for me was just the people who who are playing in the bowl game and who opted out. I was fully confident Gervon Dexter wasn't going to play in the bowl game, and I was fully confident Ventrell Miller would, but they flipped it there a little bit. I get Justin Shorter not playing. He got injured in the last bowl game, so had he had NFL draft plans, he injured his neck in the bowl game last year. So I fully get him opting out, and every guy opting out. I will say I wish Ventrell Miller had one last game as a Gator, just because that dude is Florida football personified. But no real surprises yet. At least I think maybe after the bowl game we'll see a couple guys declare, and it might be shocking for some, but we'll see. But so far so good.
Prediction for the game. I've seen the Gators are around 10.5 point underdog from BetOnline. I'm looking at Oregon State. I mean, they've played 2 quarterbacks this year. Damian Martinez looks like a pretty stud running back. They've got some good receivers, but any prediction on how this thing plays out other than don't get embarrassed?
I'm taking the under. I'll say that because I think both teams offensively, they want to run the ball. They can't throw the ball no matter what they want to do. Like even if they wanted to throw the ball 50 times, their running game is still going to be more efficient and just more productive. I'm taking the under. I think Oregon State wins the game. I think that they cover the spread, but I think it'll be close to the spread. Maybe like a 14-point win for Oregon State instead of the actual 10.5 that the line is set at.
One more for you. We're talking to everybody. Brandon Olsen, Locked On Gators. Recruiting day coming up in just a couple days. And I know you're excited. You've been all over this covering the recruiting angle. Jaden Rashada, I know, highlights this class, the big-time quarterback. And based on how Jack Miller looks this weekend, Rashada could be in the driver's seat to be QB1 next year. But who are you most excited about in this Gator recruiting class so far?
I will say I think I'm most excited for just the receivers in general. One thing that Florida has had, and I love their receivers right now, but Florida receivers haven't been especially dynamic, we'll say. And you've got Aiden Mizell as just a speed demon coming in. Eugene Wilson III is climbing up the recruiting ranks as one of the best slot receivers in high school right now. It's going to be nice to get some fresh legs in there that are capable of making these big dynamic plays. And even corner also I'm incredibly excited for. Jakeem Jackson is, I know, someone where he's being talked of as like a flip candidate with either Miami or his visit to Kentucky. I'm hoping that he stays to be a Gator because he's got great physical attributes. I just want to see him on the field in that orange and blue for Florida, and hopefully for a long time.
And one more, I know they were losing a ton of guys to the transfer portal. What is it, over 20 guys, I think, already into the portal that were Florida Gators, but already bringing one in. News a couple days ago, Caleb Banks from Louisville coming over. Is he a guy you expect is going to start on the D-line next year?
I think so. I think that he's going to step into that Gervon Dexter role. They're similar size profiles. Obviously, the nose tackle role is Desmond Watson's until he goes to the NFL. But Caleb Banks is someone that I think could step into the Gervon Dexter pass rushing D end that's really playing D tackle role. But I will say that he didn't play much at Louisville. His numbers on a per snap basis are great. I think I've repeated them so much that if I'm not mistaken, it's 23 pass rush reps in his time at Louisville, 4 pressures on those 23 reps, which is 17.5% pressure rate. But then again, that's a very small sample size to be like, oh yeah, no, he's a great pass rusher. So we'll see what he does become. But I mean, I don't think I've ever been this confident in a Florida coaching staff to get the most out of their players.
Yeah, the interesting part with Florida, at least, it's going to be Jaden Rashada, Jack Miller next year. I'm sure they'll hit that transfer portal up. DJ Lagway, a recruit already for the class of 2024, big 5-star quarterback coming in. I saw Emory Jones is entering the portal again from Arizona State. Any interest? You want to bring him back for one more run?
If he wants to play receiver, sure, he can come back, but he will not be quarterback for my team, I promise you.
All right, Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators. He is so excited for this big-time SRS Distributions Las Vegas Bowl. Hey, at least Billy Napier looks the part, unlike Oregon State's coach. He looks like
Looks like he's in Vegas on a finance, conference or something. But shout out Billy Napier. Let's see if he can get this thing started out. We don't want to start this thing on the wrong foot, Brandon. We don't want the SEC to start 0-1 into bowl season. It's not going to be a good look for anybody. So let's go get a Gator victory, and we'll roll into the offseason feeling good, right?
Hope so, but I'm a bit worried that it won't go the way we want it to go.
All right, check about Brandon Olsen. Locked On Gators, wherever you find your podcast. More after this.
Thank you guys again for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Got a couple more nuggets we want to get in before we get out of here. Thanks again to our buddy Brandon Olsen for joining us. But let's start with guys declaring for the NFL draft over at Tennessee. Darnell Wright, been a big key piece of Tennessee's offensive line the last couple of years, keeping Hendon Hooker upright. Wright announced he is declaring for the NFL draft, revealed he will take the field for the Vols in the Orange Bowl. So playing in the bowl game will be big for Darnell Wright, trying to improve his draft stock. With Joe Milton, he will take over continue playing at quarterback with Hendon Hooker out. Orange Bowl against Clemson set for 8 o'clock Eastern on Friday, December 30th on ESPN. Over at South Carolina, defensive back Darius Rush announced he is entering the NFL draft. Rush talked about his time with the Gamecocks as a dream come true, reflecting on his time in Columbia. He closed out the season with 38 tackles, 7 passes defended, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble. Finishes out his college career 4 seasons with the Gamecocks, 75 combined tackles in his career. So best of luck to Darius Rush heading off to the next level. Some good defensive backs coming out of South Carolina in recent years, going off to the NFL. Over at Kentucky, defensive back Carrington Valentine announced Thursday he is declared for the NFL draft. He will not play in the Music City Bowl against Iowa. He said in a statement, "I truly believe that I've accomplished all there is to accomplish at the collegiate level and therefore will forego my final year of eligibility and head to the NFL. Wish all my teammates the best of luck in the Music City Bowl." Valentine recorded 46 tackles, 9 passes defended, a sack, and a fumble recovery this season. Back over to Tennessee. The Vols preparing for the Orange Bowl. Jalen Hyatt announced on Twitter this week he is opting out of the bowl game, declaring for the NFL draft. The stud wide receiver made some history this year and became the 13th player in program history to achieve unanimous All-America status. Hyde had already been voted to the first team of all 5 of the NCAA recognized All-America football teams before being named to the American Football Coaches Association first team on Wednesday. Became the first Tennessee player to earn consensus All-American honors since Eric Berry back in 2009 and the first receiver to accomplish the feat. He also became the first Biletnikoff Award recipient in Vols history during their 10-2 season. In recruiting news, some good news for Brian Kelly and company on Thursday as Javian Toviano announced he is headed to LSU. The blue chip defensive back from Dallas, Texas, announced his commitment to LSU. He had 34 scholarship offers from all over the country, including the SEC. His ceremony was streamed on YouTube. He's listed at 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. On 24/7 composite ratings, he is a 4-star recruit, the number 6 cornerback in this recruiting class. So LSU now 25 total commits, and still adding to their class. Some good news for the Vols as Arian Carter announced his commitment this week to play for the Vols. 4-star recruit, linebacker out of Smyrna, Tennessee. Chose the Vols over Alabama and Ohio State. Picked up an orange Tennessee hat at his recruiting ceremony. Put it down, grabbed the other 2, put them down, and finally put the Tennessee hat from under the table and put it on his head. He's the number 13 linebacker in the country, number 2 player in the state of Tennessee. And now the Vols have 25 commitments as of this recording. They're ranked number 9 in the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. Some good news for Zach Arnett. Mississippi State landed a verbal commitment from Luke Evans. Announced his decision on Twitter on Thursday. His pledge to Mississippi State becomes the 22nd player to commit to Mississippi State, the first to do so under new head coach Zach Arnett. He's a 3-star recruit, 6'1", 165 pounds, transferred from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, to play for Chaminade Madonna this year, considered the nation's number 53 cornerback in the nation. So congrats to Zach Arnett and company at Mississippi State. There you have it. That is the latest news going on around the conference. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. We'll recap Florida in the Las Vegas Bowl, get you set for some of the bowl games happening next week, and, of course, keep you up to date on all the latest moving and shaking around the transfer portal, more NFL draft commit or declarations, and, of course, National Signing Day coming up in just a couple of days. We'll get you caught up on all the latest recruiting news as well right here on Locked On SEC. I'm Chris Gordy. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.